Hey folks, welcome to today's VMC on AWS Customer Success call. My name is Will Rodbard. As ever, joining me online, we have a couple of the other architects and hopefully more will join. We've got Zach and Ricky, and there are a growing list of attendees. We have a number of our customer success managers online as well. You can manually unmute yourselves, guys, to ask any questions. What I'm going to do, as per usual, is dive into the release notes and just have a very quick chat about those. Feel free to jump in to ask any questions, to anything burning, anything you've seen over the last week or so. If you want to pick up on, feel free to chat about. There's been, I guess, most of the internal people on the call will know that there's been a relatively large announcement came out last week, and this was the much anticipated 1.9 drop of the software, or M9 as we refer to it internally, and I think it's going to take us a fair amount of time to just have a look at the release notes this week. If before I do, I don't know if anybody has anything specific they would like to query, or something they've been waiting to drop and have noticed isn't there or is there and want to discuss in detail. Feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I'm just going to literally work my way down the list for now, and feel free to jump in and ask. And as I keep flicking back, by the way, to the attendees and the panelists, because the people are joining, so bear with me if I just go quiet for a moment. So yeah, new features as of 16th of January. Up at the top here under general, we're looking at enhanced activity log and historical notification events. It's kind of useful if you were like me, just off for a little while. You can now go back up to 6 months in your activity log and just have a look at the activities and announcements that came out via the UI. And the upgrade process has now been updated as well. What I was going to do during the call was actually dig into some of these in more detail and pre-open all these, but I think what would be worthwhile for everybody who is relatively new to the call or new to the VMC update process would just be to have a look at the release note themselves and then follow off some of these links, because they do go into quite a bit more detail than we'd potentially have time to go through in an hour-long call. But I did want to call out the upgrade and maintenance process because it's quite an important and a big one. Yeah, feel free to trawl through this at your own leisure. But upgrades and maintenance is a fairly hot topic with customers. Obviously, we are kind of managing this environment for you, the customer, and quite often it's going to impact or get in the way of something you planned yourself. So this is something that we've put some more information down on and changing the process a little bit. But yeah, definitely go and check out the upgrade maintenance stuff. Cloud Gateway, this was a challenging piece of software for us, I guess. I'm surprised nobody's laughing at this stage. We've had a number of issues here, and luckily, thankfully, there's quite a few resolved. The one that I used to have a problem with, or I've seen quite a bit, was the UI installer. So I'm glad that's it's the fix has been released for that there. I think that's the last one listed. Yep, there we go. But the auto updates are no longer impacted by the expiry of the appliance root password, which is amazing. The compatibility between the Cloud Gateway and on-prem update 3 was preventing customers. So that was sort of holding people back. So that's been addressed. And also an issue that was introduced in the prior version that prevented the installation of the Cloud Gateway against custom SSO domains has now been fixed as well.
So is there also a new version of the Cloud Gateway appliance?
Oh, is that Marion? Hi, Marion. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
I don't know if it's an exact new drop of the Cloud Gateway or it's just issues have been fixed and rolled out as patches of. It's a good question, though. I'll certainly find out and come back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Will.
No worries. So VM level space reporting on SAN. So we've got sort of better visibility now into VM capacity and the consumption in the vSphere client. So you can now see more space that's consumed before and after a policy is applied. So policies in vSAN is an interesting one because obviously most customers, or a lot of customers, start at the 3-node SDDC size and then progress on to 4, 5, 6, 10, however many hundreds of nodes later, and quite early on they're using obviously one storage policy and don't then change necessarily to the next storage policy. So having better reporting on space consumed before and after a policy is applied. I think the timing of this is good as well, like the amount of time it takes to reflect this. I know in 1.8 we had a situation with a customer where they made a load of changes to vSAN storage policies but weren't aware that there was actually a delay before those changes would A, kick in, and B, then be reported on. So for me, I'm going to look into this one a bit more to find out what the timing is like now, how much time has changed from applying a policy to when it gets reported against. And the visibility of the vSphere replication objects in the capacity view I think is quite useful as well. Obviously, if you're doing a site-to-site mirror in effect, you're going to be potentially losing 50 or more % of your available storage to replication objects. So definitely a useful one to see. Jumbo frame support for traffic over Direct Connect. I believe we were actually waiting on AWS to work with us on this fix, so I'm really glad to see that's in there now. And how many of you have actually, or have any of you actually seen the new UI yet for the firewall, the gateway configuration pages within anybody?
Yeah, we just in the lab.
Yeah, we have it.
We have the M9 deployed.
Cool. So there was a hand raised there as well. Somebody wanted to ask a question, maybe. No. Okay. Cool. So I'll very quickly just show you what that looks like as well. So within VMC, obviously I get timed out every single time on this one. The UI does look a little bit different. I don't know if you it's up to you whether you prefer it or not. I personally do. The only thing I do find ever so slightly annoying is where it places the objects in the window, and I find myself dragging them around quite a bit now, just to put them back where I want them. I was going to say cursor of the live demo there, and it wasn't going to show up, but the fact that you can drag this around now makes it somewhat annoying if you keep resizing the screens, but you'll notice a very different look and feel to previous SDDC layout for the network and security page there. Anything else anybody else has noticed in this release of M9 around the network and security piece? Any major changes that you've seen, don't like?
It shows compute gateways. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, good call.
Especially since you can't actually create more than one. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, right? I don't know the reasoning behind showing it and then not really giving you the ability to do much with it. Maybe it's like most of the feature sets within here is a customer-driven request, maybe, or it's a prereq for another config drop later on, maybe in M10, M11.
As I understood, it will be a new, it will be a feature to have a third edge, let's say, or the second edge deployed in addition to the cluster we have now. But I don't know exactly, mainly to prepare the environment in order to allow customer use 2 different public IP addresses for IPsec VPNs.
Sure. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, it's like Zach was saying, it's there. Can't really do much about it, but like we suspected, is there for next drops. So thanks for that, Marion. So yeah, there was something else I was waiting for in the UI for NSX. It was another customer request, but I haven't seen it drop. So maybe that'll be one for a future call. But enhancements to the DFW as well. So you can now set the DFW to block all traffic using the whitelist option. And the default rule under DFW remains to set to allow all traffic under the blacklist setting. Um, what I wanted to do today was potentially not dig into this in detail. I had a couple of people that were going to join the call from a customer site. They wanted to dive into one of the issues, one of the new releases in particular, and I was unsure as well whether they were going to join or not. So I'm kind of stalling around the network piece in case they do drop in. But Marion, you look like you're about to ask a question. You were unmuted, but maybe not.
I mute myself.
No worries. So inventory groups is another one that's quite often talked about as a way of managing. And now you can dynamically mix and match the criteria. So with and or logic, which I think is quite good, rather than very specific. You have one group for one and one group for another. And you can nest groups, which is makes it slightly easier to build sort of ruling for gateways. Improvements on the internal monitoring. I think that monitoring is another hot topic because customers feel quite often that they are, because it's that managed platform, that they are slightly one step removed, but still feel slightly nervous, especially around network and security, that they need to A, see everything, and B, report on everything. So the fact that we can now have the data transmit receive on the logical network, seen by the management gateway and compute gateway, reporting out on that I think is really useful. And the physical network data transmit and receive on the network interface is also good as well. I had a UK government customer querying around the reporting and the security aspect of that sort of how can we prove and how can we report on what's going where, and how can we ensure that things like additional NICs aren't added, additional data paths aren't opened without us being able to see or at least report on, and then have alarms and alerts generated from. So I know that they will be definitely interested in the physical network side of this, which is good. And the edge node resource, so CPU utilization per core is another one. I think that'll help in planning for when we scale out edges and increase the size of them. Sorry, there are some limitations on the amount of say packets per second or bandwidth throughput we can stick through one of the edges. So reporting on that and the ability to give our customers visibility on that might mean that we'll avoid any potential packet drop or blocking issues based on the edge. I know one of the architects had something similar the other day. They were discussing. I'm just trying to see if they were on the call. Not sure if it was you, Zach. Somebody maybe on the last call was talking about the limitations of the edge device. Am I dropping you in on it, Zach? There, it was you or wasn't you?
I don't think it was me specifically, but I've heard about mainly the packets per second. Since the edge, I don't know what the size. What's it deployed as, like a medium?
Yeah, I think so. And then it's like a call with SRE to get that increased, and probably comes across your desk, Marion, or Mohit even to get those edges increased. So not a quick and easy thing.
Yeah, we had some cases in the past. In fact, well, as a result of the network connectivity problems that customer found on their network, I saw cases where the backend team decided to increase the size of the edges, so to make it large. I don't know exactly how is the type of their edges during the deployment, but yeah. I think
it is medium in most cases, and in a future release, certainly a roadmap item, the ability to select edge size at SDDC creation is an option that's planned. I think they'll be useful for when a customer's done a lot of design work up front and they're not going to be just starting with a 3-4 node environment. They are literally going to drop hundreds of nodes in there because they know their requirements up front fully, and they're going to migrate a lot of workloads over or start fresh in VMC. The ability to actually pre-select that rather than wait until you hit the wall and then log support calls will be easier for both us and for the customer. So yeah, it'll be something that will fit into our design decision sort of matrix conversations with the customers.
Yeah, and in terms of packets per second, I think the limitation it was to 6,000.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that, Marion. Yeah, we were talking actually. It was the I think we were looking at the config maximum stuff last week, and that was where we were seeing that 6.5. I think we were seeing stuff. Cool. Yeah, so is there anything anybody's actually been waiting for, any of you guys, your customers, any major stuff that's not visible there, or surprised by anything that has dropped in there at all? Okay, so there is another conversation or discussion I think it'd be useful to have as well, in that when we drop a new version, any brand new SDDC will receive that version. So if you are running multiple SDDCs and you've been running them for a certain amount of time, you may find they are now on differing versions, which is obviously going to have a potential impact to how you manage your SDDCs. For example, we just saw the SDDC, the network and security portion is different, looks different from other versions. So there's a bit of a learning curve there. There's also potential changes. So in the release notes there was a mention of API changes. So you can now do more things with the NSXT policy API. So that will change obviously with every release. We're going to release new API, we're going to release new features. If you have multiple SDDCs that look different, I'll obviously not be able to find an old SDDC now, will I, that's got an older release on. But yeah, so it's gonna increase your management a little bit. It's going to mean that you do things a little bit differently, and ordinarily we would be upgrading all of the SDCs that you own as a customer to the same release to avoid that, and to mean that it's easier for us to support your environment because they're all running latest release and the same release. However, in the case of M9, because M10, so the 1.10 version of VMC is going to drop relatively soon, there are some discussions about whether or not to upgrade customers. So if you are a customer and you are watching this call now, or you've seen the release notes and there's something that you were specifically waiting for that is in this release, then you need to kind of reach out to us. Or if we don't already know, as in we don't have a relationship with you already, you need to reach out to us and start that conversation as to why you definitely need to be upgraded to this release as opposed to waiting for the next. I know we have a number of customers in EMEA who have been waiting for the 1.9 release and specific features within, and we will have those conversations and they will be on the upgrade path. But as a rule, I don't think every customer is going to be upgraded to M9. It will be a straight hop from 1.8, whichever variant, whether it's 1.8 v3 to the 1.10 release. So if you have a customer, anybody got any customers that are waiting for this, haven't seen the internal releases about how to proceed, then reach out to me or any of the guys on the call, and we can point you to the documentation that states that. Or any customers watching this on YouTube later on, please do feel free to reach out to us at any of the sort of Twitter feeds below or in the comments on the YouTube channel, and we can give you some direct guidance on that. Cool. So although a really big drop, there was some other really useful information that came through that isn't actually listed here, and that is the software releases that are actually coming out in this. So M9 has been a big drop, not just in terms of features, but actually the underlying software that's been dropped as well. And I was just looking for the email that points that out. So as you know, the two major updates are to the vSphere 7 code and the NSX drop as well. Anybody aware of anything or any issues or problems with upgrading to those releases that you're aware of, you've seen so far, you guys in GSS, or yeah?
It was a issue with a VM storage policy based on tags. So I don't know. I'm expecting to have this fix into this new version, but I didn't saw anything about tags. Maybe I should.
Tags, yeah. So there is there was the ability to now add tags, but yeah, good shout that it's not called out. There was something. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be listed. I'm just seeing if I can track down the mail that I was talking about. See if I can find it. Yeah, no, I can't actually see it. So there was there was I guess the main one that people were potentially waiting for was the managed transit gateway. And the fact that that's not mentioned here is clearly telling. You know, that's a big one that people were waiting for, and that has now slipped to the next release. So I know of a couple of customers that were definitely waiting for Transit Gateway. Anybody else got customers waiting on that, or have any other awareness of that?
Yeah, I had some customers looking for a supported version. As I understood, some of them they already started to use Transit Gateway, but it was not supported.
Sure. So yeah, we've covered on this call quite a few times actually, sort of reasons it's not covered, things that would be great if it was, and the reasoning basically for us looking at a managed transit gateway solution. And the challenge actually with a lot of customers now is that they again they're hanging on and waiting for this, but it's difficult to move forward and design to something that is still a roadmap item. So one of the challenges we have every day when we're discussing stuff with customers is that it is software and it is likely to change before a release drops. And this is it's very telling, right? What we don't want to do is release software or an option or a feature or functionality that then has major problems with it. And I guess the managed transit gateway not being released means that it's got issues in it still, and we're not happy with it going live until it's 100% resolved. So unfortunately, that does mean that any customers that have designed to it or were waiting on it to do the next major update in their own platform, it means that is pushed back and that's on hold. But I guess that's better than deploying something that may have issues and have challenges. I certainly know from a support perspective that you guys in GSS are definitely definitely grateful to to software being pulled before it's released if we know there's problems. I have actually found the version list stuff, so let me see if I can put this into something we can share. Here we go. Let's have a look. Right, so software releases, software versions in this release. So we are looking at like I said before, the vSphere 7 branch of ESX and vCenter Server, and the H5 client is also running a new release. Oh, so there we go. So the VMC gateway, I'll check for you, Marion, if that is actually the cloud gateway, or whether the vCenter cloud gateway, or whether it's another gateway that we're referring to that's been uplifted. But yeah, another branch of NSXT has dropped, as have a lot of this other stuff, like the Patronus and the Bring Up stuff are all internal management services that we use for any customers that are watching. But I guess the two major ones are the NSXT and vSphere uplifts. Now, as per usual, these are not going to be sort of public. They're going to be branches of the public software, and we're going to be at least a couple of releases ahead of public availability there. So what you'll see in any build numbers that you see released, it's unlikely you'll ever see these on your on-prem stuff. So yeah, actually SRM is another one to call out as well. So an SRM uplift to 8.11. So yeah, but SRM obviously one of the advantages with VMC and other cloud stuff we're doing has provided backwards compatibility, or we've had to build in backwards compatibility and multi-version compatibility for things like VMC. So SRM, sorry. So SRM obviously is now not locked one version to one version, and that's driven by the need for us to be able to make it communicate and talkable with on-prem and not force on-prem environments to uplift to a version that potentially they can't release can't get their hands on anyway. So. Okay, so yeah, that's software versions covered. What we typically do on these calls as well is we do a bit of a roundtable between the architects, and we sort of discuss anything that we've been working on this week, anything we've covered. So what I'll do is I'll go first, because I've had a few interesting discussions this week, or last week, shall we say, about AWS accounts. Something that came up the tail end of last week was around the use of the AWS
It's
account.
like once a month, I think,
Cool.
like the third Monday.
Sorry, I'll just mute somebody there. There we go. So one query that came up from a customer, they had they were a secure government customer, and they have multi-factor authentication enabled on for everything they do, and AWS recently changed how its MFA service works, so it actually broke not their account, but their ability to log in with the account they were going to use. So it actually put on hold their ability to deploy an SDDC, because their main account that they would use was unavailable, I guess. So they were asking whether they could temporarily use a different AWS account and then potentially migrate it over later. So we had to do some digging, and I guess the obvious answer is no, you definitely can't use another AWS account and then move it later. When you use that, when you deploy the required VPC in AWS, that is linked to an account. Now AWS do have this sort of VPC sharing or account sharing capability. But actually, it's an interesting one for the CSE guys and the GSS guys on the call. Are you aware of whether VPC sharing and account sharing that AWS offer, is that something supported by us? I can't see how or why it would be, but I'd not come across it before.
Our documentation, it's clearly stated that to map one SDDC to one VPC. So we do not support
Sure, more
other options.
yeah, thanks for that, Marion. It was more around the ability to, I guess, in the back end, have one VPC that is owned by customer A, and then customer B for the same company creates another AWS account and then wants to take ownership of that VPC. Now, that may potentially be supported, but the ability to replace one VPC with another later on is definitely obviously not supported, because a VPC is effectively a subnet. It's a range of IP addresses that things are consumed from. And we just like changing the management side post SDDC deployment is impossible to do and would break lots of things. It's the same with the VPC, I think. But yeah, it's an interesting one about ownership of VPCs, because it's an AWS construct, and if AWS provide the ability to either share a VPC between multiple accounts or change full ownership of a VPC. It's something that I'm currently looking into, but if anybody knows about, it'd be add it into chat or the comments later on. It'd be worth having a bit of a deeper dive. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was looking at for the beginning bit of this week. So what I might do is I'll just do a bit of a roundtable with the architects, or anybody else want to jump in with any questions, feel free. But let's start at the bottom this week. And Zach, if I go to you, fella, if there's anything interesting you've been looking at this week, or tail end of last week.
No, nothing new really coming up. Just kind of working with customers on some onboarding, but nothing too out of the ordinary.
Are you finding with onboarding that you are involved less? Customers seemingly they know more now. It's not such a new thing, or are you finding that you're still doing the same kind of onboarding with customers now that you were doing at at the very beginning of your tenure with the VMC team?
Yeah, it's just most of the same. I mean, just reviewing their the subnets they want to use. Like one specific thing would be make sure your connected VPC subnet is bigger than the bare minimum, or at least for the CIDR, so you can actually use the AWS resources within the connected VPC.
Sure.
I've
Yeah.
seen that
Good. I
happen a
mean,
few times.
we've all seen customers making the wrong call with the management side, right? I think we had a whole call dedicated to it not so long ago, where we had a customer that by necessity actually picked a really small the smallest management side they could, and then immediately ran out of available IP addresses. And we've covered on this call before as well why a /23 is not all of the available IPs, for example, that you'd see in a normal /23 network, why only some are available for the hosts. And it's all about, it's publicly available information about why there's a huge number of them get consumed by each host for the different sort of interfaces, and some are reserved for other management objects. But I can post those links on the chat or on YouTube later on as well, so people can go off and have a look at why and what's been consumed where. But yeah, I guess that's one of the most important initial discussions, right, about sizing an environment.
Yeah, definitely something you want to get right the first time. Otherwise, it's a lot of difficulty to.
Well,
It is
yeah,
possible
it's
to jump
impossible, right?
over.
We have to we have to migrate then, really, don't we? We have to start
Yeah, if
fresh
you
and deploy more.
on the SCDC, yeah, I mean you can there is a way to relink the VPC, but that's not ideal.
Yeah. Ricky, you're up, dude. What have you been working on?
Well, I think last week we touched upon how having L2 extensions with HCX. So towards the tail end, we started talking about application mapping and using Verni data to kind of map out how we should proceed with what applications to move to the cloud first. And pretty much got a crash course in how powerful Verni can be to help customers actually.
Sure, just to clarify
out
for some people, so Verni is your vRealized network.
Oh yeah, apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We use acronyms all the time, right? And actually, there's multiple acronyms for each product most of the time. So just so vRealized Network Insight for cloud, or the on-prem version.
So for this guy, we're using the on-prem version right now, and just going through all their application mapping, hoping everything is mapped correctly, and then we're going to have discussions about pros and cons of your network extensions, if you have your applications up in the cloud, and how the routing works and all that fun stuff.
So it's a it's never a bad thing, right, to have more data than you potentially need for a migration. I know everything about your environment, but the way HCX enables you with one migration type, i.e. layer 2 extension, means that you don't necessarily need that data, but it's always a good thing to have, right? Because it helps you make that judgment call as to whether you do a traditional migration or you do a extended network style live migration.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of the conversations that we're starting to have with them. So. It's been an interesting week.
Yeah. So have you had any discussions yet around then the changes? So from an operational standpoint, the changes that migrating to VMC will have an impact on for things like your configuration databases, your database of everything you own, for example, and how that needs updating, and then how do you keep that live if things are moving around between clouds?
We have not. I think that's going to be our conversation probably the next few days.
So
Regarding that.
that's another area where things like Network Insight can provide you loads of really valuable information because it's mapping everything that's talking to everything else. You suddenly have a whole stack of information about objects on your network that you may or may not have had a record of before. And these can then fit into your new your CMDB, your config management database. It can feed into and update older records. One of the things that we often talk about with customers is the fact that moving to a cloud is whatever kind of cloud, whether it's hybrid, native clouds or anything else, it's an operational change more than a technology change, and that's very true with VMware Cloud on AWS, right? Because it's 90% same software and same way of working. It's just an operational change.
Right.
Cool, thanks, Ricky. Who do we have? Oh, Asaf. I'm going to pick on you out of alphabetical order. How are you doing, fella?
Doing well, thanks. I'm new to the team, so I've been mostly shadowing Ricky, working on getting familiar with all the different options out there, and that's pretty much it.
Well, welcome to the team. Thanks for joining. And another new member we've got is DeMarcus. We did speak to you last week, mate. I wonder if you've. I guess you're still doing a lot of monitoring and following around yourself. But is there anything interesting you've seen come up that you weren't aware of, or anything new you've learned this week?
Yeah, so it's the same as Asaf, just shadowing Ricky with some of his customers. We did get a chance to work with a customer on getting hybrid link mode set up, and that worked out well. For the customer, right, to be able to manage his on-premise vCenter and his SDDC vCenter from the same, single pane of glass.
Sure. So I imagine that conversations around the vCenter Cloud Gateway were also had with that customer, and decisions made as to use or not use it, maybe. So the update that's just come with the resolved issues in M9 is maybe a little late for that customer, but timely for their next their cloud.next maybe.
Yeah, we had conversations about the cloud gateway with him, and decided against it mutually. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a warm topic internally, right? The cloud gateway.
Exactly.
There are definitely use cases for it. It's almost we have a food item in the UK called Marmite, and it's the catchphrase is you love it or you hate it. There's no in between, and I think that's possibly a cloud gateway thing. It's we'll call it a Marmite piece of software.
Exactly.
Cool. Right. So we kind of although we've had a big drop this or last week, there's a fair amount of people coming back after Christmas, just ongoing stuff. So not a huge amount of new stuff happening in customer land right now. But we do have a large number of customer success managers and GSS technical folk online. So if any of you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, by the way, if you are a little bit shy, or just jump in and ask any questions. Or if not, this call really works on, or will work best on content and questions. So if you have something that you'd like to see us demo or you want to talk about, feel free to jump in or just ping any of us. And then we can, as per normal, we can build it out in the lab, demo it, or discuss live online. So if any of you have any questions, then feel free. If not, what we can do is we'll close the call a little bit early this week, and I'll post it up to YouTube. And then please do share the link with your customers on how to subscribe to sign up for this. And hopefully the community will grow. More questions we get, the better responses, the better conversations are. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a short question.
Sure.
In regards with the customers that are using DRAS 8.6 DRAS service from the 8.6, do you have did you meet some real well documented what the customer needs to do in case of their data center it's down? So it means that there is no access to the on-prem environment, no network extensions, no access to the on-prem gateways.
So as in like a failover process?
Yep.
I haven't. I don't have a failover process for customers using DR as a service, but I would imagine at the very least this would be part of a pre-live kind of thing where if a customer is wanting to use DR as a service, whether it be their own effectively DR as a service or it be a hosted one like our DR as a service option. One of the, well, there are two things, right? There are two points that anybody looking at DR need to look at, and that's recovery time and recovery point objectives, effectively. You know, how much
That's
data
correct.
loss. And
That's correct. But it's also how the customer, how the users will get access to the service.
well, yeah, absolutely. So that comes into the I guess point. You know, at what point is that data available? And part of that is, well, what has to happen in order to make access to that application available again? What DNS records need updating? Where do users need to get repointed to? You know, all that works, and that has to form the basis of the plan. And you could, it doesn't actually matter whether it's a DR as a service or whether it's a customer's existing DR plan for on-prem 1 to on-prem 2. That information has to exist, otherwise they have no DR capability. And
Yeah,
if you have sorry, Mary, I was just going to say, if you have a customer that's looking into that, and that's their question, absolutely, that's something that as architects can talk about with them and drive into and give them advice on. If they are kind of a bit further down the path and they are consuming a service or they have a service provided to them and they don't have that access, I'm not saying it's too late, but it's definitely a very urgent matter that we would probably need to want to talk about them.
Yeah, I have a customer that he already implemented DRAS with 8.6, but he was asking me, hey, I would like to know, okay, how we can restore the service in case something wrong happened, how we can get access to the user. I mean, the user can access the own services on the SDDC side and stuff like that. So a manual like that. So currently we don't have anything in a 8.6 portal, and most probably we'll need to have some scenario in case of how in case of disaster, how the customer can restore the service, how the users on the customer side can get access to the.
Sure. Okay, we'll tell you what. Let's do this because that's potentially a massive conversation. What I can do is
I just wanted to raise the point, you know.
yeah, no, absolutely, because
as
it's
a question,
it's a service that exists, but we don't provide everything else around it, right? So because we don't know every customer's environment and we don't possibly know what they have and how they need to access it when they fail over. But if there is a specific customer case you have, I'm happy to talk with you about that offline, and maybe we can then build out as a topic for a future call, and we can go through the list of things that somebody consuming a cloud-based DR service would need to think about over and above or instead of a normal on-prem 1 to on-prem 2 style database, DR service.
Yeah, sure. I will ping you with the case I have.
Brilliant. Okay, so there we go. There's content for a future call already sorted, and that, I mean, that's good, right? So that you've raised something that we don't necessarily know the answers to right now because it's a bit of an open-ended question, but it will, you know, it'll hopefully provide some interesting content for next week or the week after. And the same goes for the rest of you. If you guys have anything that you're seeing come through as queries from customers a lot, or you just keep getting asked about and you're not really sure the answer, just drop them through, raise them now. We're I mean, I'm certainly not a scary person. I don't know about the other architects on the call, but I'm quite approachable. So yeah, feel free. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. If there's nothing else, I will close out the call now. And then I'll hopefully see you all and some of your customers next week.
Yep, sure. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
Will.
nice day all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for joining. Speak to you next week.